I'm Brian Hackney. At least 33 states across the country have been in the middle of debating transgender issues in state legislatures, some looking at trans girls playing sports, others aiming to ban trans kids from accessing what is known as gender-affirming health care. That helps trans people with their physical transition. 60 Minutes Plus correspondent Seth Doane investigated one bill in Arkansas that became law in March, and he spoke to a 15-year-old trans male who is a plaintiff in a lawsuit that is suing the state of Arkansas. Seth joins us now. And Seth, why is the 15-year-old taking such a step?
This 15-year-old named Dylan Brandt is this plaintiff in this ACLU lawsuit, along with 3 other transgender kids, their families, and 2 doctors. He is trying to stop this ban on gender-affirming care, which is it has become law and will go into effect in late July in Arkansas. So he is, together with the ACLU, trying to stop that from going into effect. They got a little bit of a boost late last week from the Department of Justice, which issued a statement that, in essence, supported the ACLU lawsuit. But at this point, what he's facing is losing what they call gender-affirming health care. He's about 2 years into his transition, living as a young trans man, and that means he's taking, in his case, testosterone. So he would lose the access to that. The doctors would no longer be allowed to prescribe that medication in Arkansas, and he would redevelop feminine characteristics. So for him, it's a very grave issue.
Can we expand on it a little bit for you to explain what exactly is gender-affirming care and what is at stake for all of these kids if the law goes into effect?
Well, Brian, at stake is losing this, and the gender-affirming care is part of a real process of identifying, first of all, how you're feeling. There are about 1,500 medical professionals who make up something called WPATH, which looks at transgender health care. And there is a standard of care that doctors around the U.S. follow. And part of it is emotional, is looking at whatever societal, personal, family issues you might have, going through some therapy. And then if you want to move forward and start with a physical transition, there are things that you might use. One would be a puberty blocker, which a non-transgender person might have to use if you're going through puberty at a very young age. Your parents might put you on a puberty blocker. This stops puberty. The next step is to go on to cross-sex hormones, which is what Dylan, the guy who we interviewed, the young trans man who we interview, he is using testosterone now. And in this story, if you get to watch it, you'll see he really marvels at the changes that his body is making. He records his voice dropping. He grows facial hair. He says he's very proud of this mustache that he has. But the most interesting stuff for me was talking with him about, he says one day he had cut his hair. He'd wanted to cut his hair for a long time. And it was at one point that someone opened the door and they said thank you to a man. Thank you, sir. And he said, that put into words what I've been feeling. He said, my entire childhood, I felt like my insides didn't match my outsides. And when I was referred to as a guy, as a sir, it clicked for me.
Seth, is there a consensus on the scientific community on gender-affirming care for minors? Have scientists looked at this, psychologists looked at this, and come to some kind of a consensus?
The vast majority of doctors, Brian, in the U.S. Do support this. There is a standard of care. There are, of course, smaller groups of doctors who oppose this, who are concerned. But as you saw this legislation going through in Arkansas, you had 6 of the biggest medical associations voice their support for transgender, gender-affirming health care. So there is a science behind this. It is supported by the vast majority of doctors in the U.S.
Let's say the law goes into effect. What do the families of these kids plan to do?
It's a good question. Some say they've thought of moving out of state. Some say they don't know what to do. We were asking even questions, could you get a prescription for this care and have it a few months in advance? Nope, they can't do that. It would be illegal for these doctors to be prescribing this medication, and they are forced to say, do we stay here? Do we lose this care? What can we do? It is a quandary. And one of the things that Governor Asa Hutchinson, who actually tried to vetoed the law, but then the legislature came back and overturned that veto. He said he saw this as a vast government overreach. He's a Republican, and he said one of the things he was particularly concerned about were people like Dylan Brandt, whom we interviewed, who are already in the throes or already using this care and would lose it.
Wow. Seth had mentioned if you watch the piece, you can watch the piece. Seth's full report right now is on 60 Minutes Plus. It's available on the Viacom CBS streaming app, Paramount Plus. Seth Doane, I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking time out from your vacation to join us and talk about this.
Nice to get to talk with you, Brian. Thanks for having us.
All right.